Mr. Saeed Darmaki, good morning or good afternoon. It's great to see you, and thank you for joining me today on this podcast. Really excited to hear your thoughts on traditional finance, digital assets, crypto, blockchain. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey on how you got started within the crypto space, knowing full well that you started in a traditional finance background, and now are the founder of a major DeFi project, as well as advisor to a number of protocols, as well as being really a leader both regionally in the Middle East as well as around the world in the blockchain industry. So I'd love to kick it over to you and hear your thoughts a little bit about how you got started in this industry.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I mean, happy to share my experience and my journey and any other kind of discussions that you want to go into. I know you've assigned probably like an hour, but I can talk about this topic for days on end if you wish. But yeah, I started my journey in the blockchain and crypto space 5 years ago. That is when I co-founded Alphabet Digital Currency Fund. A close friend of mine was already in the space for several years before that. And he called me out of the blue and he said, "Hey, Saeed, I know you have a traditional investment and fund management background. I really want to set up a regulated fund and I want you to be my partner." And I asked him, "What's the asset class or what's the strategy that the fund is going to be focused on?" And he said, "Crypto." And I said, "What the heck is crypto? I've never heard of this before." He said, "Have you heard of Bitcoin?" I said, "Yeah, I've heard of Bitcoin, but for the wrong reasons, for using it in with Silk Road and for illicit purposes and so on." And he urged me to kind of do some research on Bitcoin and then make a decision after I had a fundamental look at Bitcoin. And after reading about Bitcoin and looking at the fundamentals of it, for me, it was a no-brainer to actually dive into the space. I was familiar with the traditional investments and the traditional asset classes out there and the monetary system and the banking system and fiat system because of the work that I did for 9 years before that in Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, which is one of the largest global sovereign wealth funds. So for me, it was kind of, I could see the flaws in the monetary system and the fiat system, and Bitcoin and crypto assets was the perfect kind of alternative, or it had solutions to offer or solved a lot of the issues that are existing in the traditional fiat system. So I called him back and I said, "Yeah, for me, like, let's do it. I'm definitely interested in partnering with you to set up the fund." And that's how I got into the space. I left ADIA in June 2018 because after a couple of years of being involved in the space, I was just getting so busy and so entrenched in it, and I just went deep into the rabbit hole. And I needed to focus on one of the two things, either crypto assets and digital assets, or my work at ADIA. And I decided to leave in June 2018, and ever since I've just been extremely active and involved in the space, both in the region, in the Middle East, and globally too. At the time, most of my ex-colleagues thought I was crazy and delusional, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I had to kind of tell them, "Look, I've been in this space for a couple of years. I know what the technology is about. I can see the benefits of the technology. I can see the benefits of cryptocurrencies as an asset class to people globally, especially people in countries or economies where the fiat system is completely broken and there's hyperinflation and there's no kind of banking solutions for people there, and even for people who are unbanked, it's a great solution for them." So I knew that in the long term, the industry was, going to mature and there's going to be a lot of returns from investing in the space. So, I stuck to my guns. And at the time when I left, actually, it was in the middle of the bear market, and, prices were tumbling at the time. And I even had to second guess myself and think, actually, have I done the right thing here? Maybe I timed it wrong. But looking back now, I think it was the best decision I've ever made. And most of the ex-colleagues that, at the time said I was crazy, most of them are actually now invested in crypto assets. And I'm their first point of call to ask about how to invest and what my experiences were in it and so on. So it
Sure.
was good to see the evolution over time and the change of mind and the change of hearts and people over time.
One of
But it
the
was not easy.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll let you finish that point.
No, it was not easy at the time, like it was pretty difficult, but my close friends and family and partners, they all encouraged me and gave me the support that I needed, and helped me to be successful and to reach where I am today. So I don't regret it at all.
No, fantastic. One of the things that I'd like to also dig deep into a little bit more is the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, and some of our viewers may be familiar with it. It's one of those institutions where if you know, you know. It might not be a household name, but talk a little bit about, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. I've had some, relationship and experiences with it for quite a long time. It's a very storied and very illustrious organization that's a global allocator to some of the leading investment products in the world, and has been for decades. So if you can talk a little bit about your role within ADIA and what led you to how ADIA helped you transition from the traditional allocator model to really, a supercharged crypto entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I think I learned a lot from my time at ADIA. It's a great institution. It was a great career. It's, you learn a lot of things. They provide a lot of things for you to kind of progress in your career and learn new things. Previously, my role initially when I joined ADIA was in the operations department, which was servicing all the investment departments. So I had a good broad range and broad view of all the different asset classes that ADIA was investing in, whether it's in real estate or commodities or fixed income or private equity or public equities and so on. So I had a good kind of operational understanding of how the investment departments worked and all of these things. And then after a couple of years, from my initial couple of years, then I moved into the fixed income and treasury department within ADIA. So I essentially went from the lowest risk asset class in the investment universe to the highest risk asset class overnight. The transition was kind of, it took me several months when I first got into the blockchain space to actually learn about the technology and learn about the mechanics of crypto assets and digital assets. And it took me actually like probably around 6 months to kind of get a good basic understanding of what was needed and what the activities around the market were and so on. But I think, the kind of traditional investment thesis and the kind of concepts and ideas were very helpful in kind of making decisions or investment decisions in the crypto asset space, because there are similar principles. It's a similar principle of investing. You invest in any asset class, there's always, golden rules, and there's always principles and policies and so on that you need to adhere to kind of avoid losing money or making mistakes and so on. And I, of course, made a lot of money and I lost a lot of money over the years in the crypto asset space. But in the beginning, I made kind of mistakes as anybody would, but fortunately I learned from them and I grew from those and kind of developed my understanding and learning and knowledge. But I think ADIA was a great institution to be a part of, and the goal of ADIA was to and is to maintain the wealth of the future generations of the Abu Dhabi people, and that was something that I was proud to be a part of. And I hope that one day, maybe in a few years from now, ADIA starts investing in crypto assets and digital assets, and who knows, maybe I might end up back there in some capacity at some point, focusing on crypto and digital assets.
That would be a great full circle. And also for some of our viewers, it's not that you were part of ADIA. You also come from a very storied, really family that's been involved in, I think, global finance for a very long time. And I know some of your family members who are greatly respected. Did that add any additional kind of pressure, or like, what was that thought process for you when you decided to actually make the move? Because I remember when I heard, I was, for me, it was like actually a really unique moment, because somebody of kind of your stature moving into the industry was really like a seismic shift.
Yeah, great question. I think if I didn't have my father's blessing, I wouldn't have probably done the transition. But for me, like, I don't think the family attachment added any pressure, rather it added more motivation to kind of be successful in the crypto asset space, because my father was kind of one of the pioneers in ADIA who brought in fixed income as an asset class to ADIA. He brought in public equities as an asset class to ADIA. He brought in private equities as a asset class to ADIA. So he was kind of like one of the pioneers of investing in those asset classes. And for me, the way I thought about it was, I would love to follow in his footsteps, and I found an asset class that I was extremely passionate about and I had a good experience in, and I wanted to be successful in that, to kind of have my own kind of achievements that he could be proud of as well. So I don't think it was so much pressure from the family to kind of move over to the crazy and wonderful crypto asset space. It was more of a motivation, and if I didn't have their support, then I don't think I would have made the transition.
Sure. And I had the pleasure of meeting your father in the past, and some of the meetings I've had with him are still to this day, really highlights of my professional career. So I know how well respected he is, not only within the leadership in the UAE and regionally, but really by allocators and investors around the world. So I think that to see that is really special.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I can achieve kind of a quarter of what my father achieved in his career, then I'd be very, very happy. So big shoes to fill, and hopefully over time I can build a reputation that matches over time, specifically focused on this asset class that I'm very much passionate about and excited about. And even after 5 years of being heavily involved, I'm still very much extremely excited about the future of it, and I love the innovation that comes with it. And I think to be successful in this industry, the difference between this industry and others is that you need a wide range of skill sets to actually be successful. It's not just about investment decisions. It's also about people skills. It's also about social skills. It's also about networking, and many other things that you need to have a good understanding of to be actually successful. And it's not very easy to kind of be successful in the space. I know a lot of people have been lucky in making successful decisions and so on in the industry, but most of the kind of really successful people are those that have dedicated their kind of lives and careers to it, and have actually learned and educated themselves and learned a lot of different new skills to be successful in the space as well.
One of the things, some of the folks that in my network within the sovereign wealth fund community that end up transitioning to other ventures, either they do like a lateral hire where they would move from like ADIA to maybe Singapore or even Norway, or maybe go to a GP like a BlackRock or Blackstone. You actually went directly to the entrepreneurial side where you founded a business.
Yes.
What led you to, for example, you could have chosen maybe a blockchain fund, or somebody, Pantera or something of that nature. What led you to say, okay, I want to build my own business and I want to be in this industry that I think is very exciting? What was the thought process behind that?
I think for me, basically, it was if I'm gonna leave ADIA, it's either gonna be to an institution that's bigger, and that's very, very hard to come by, or it's gonna be into something that I really want to put all of my efforts and resources and time into, and kind of reap the rewards from, and kind of get the full benefit from taking the time that I wanted to establish a business. And it made more sense for me to kind of go down the entrepreneurial kind of route. Anyways, I kind of always had an entrepreneurial mindset, and I always wanted to eventually kind of set up my own business. And that's what my father did in the past as well. And family members have been entrepreneurs as well. So I guess I wanted to venture into that space. And I think I reached a level at ADIA where I didn't think there was going to be any more kind of career progression, and it was becoming really saturated and competitive in the traditional asset class space. And I wanted to kind of leap into an asset class which was still very young and still developing, and one which I can contribute to in my own way. And I think that made the most sense to me.
Well, and I share your enthusiasm about the asset space, blockchain, and the technological innovations behind it. I think are really, really advanced, and they do take a lot of time. I think once you understand, once there's that click, you almost become like an insider, and you have a feeling, okay, I understand how things work on the other side. Did that help you push forward in making that leap as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think not many people have a kind of traditional investment, traditional asset class background, and then have a kind of a equally kind of experienced crypto or digital asset kind of knowledge and experience over time. So I think definitely having that background with ADIA and with traditional investments helped a lot in kind of getting people to trust you and recognize you, and know that you're somebody that's coming from a huge institution, and somebody who has good experience in a huge institution. So you should be somebody that has, all the kind of essential ingredients to know how to do business in general, and to know how to invest in general. So it definitely helped a lot with the transition, and it definitely kind of added to my reputation as well. And I'm always thankful for all the experiences that I have learned from ADIA, and I'm still continuing to learn in the digital asset space. There's still so many things that I need to learn and read about every day, and there's so many innovations that I need to be up to date with, and so on. So I think having both sides, having a good view on both sides is extremely important and extremely useful to anybody.
How was the process of setting up Shisha Finance. By the way, where did you get the name? How did the name Shisha Finance come up to you?
Yeah, so I wanted a name that was rooted in the Middle East, but also kind of recognized globally. And I think everybody in the world knows what a shisha is, and most people who know what it is have enjoyed using it in social settings. And I think it's also kind of a community driven pastime. So I wanted a name that was Arabic and rooted in the Middle East, but also kind of globally recognized and symbolizes kind of what we are trying to do at Shisha Finance, which is to kind of get the newer people who are coming into the space access to a diversified portfolio through a platform which is a decentralized VC platform, which uses blockchain technology in its operations and smart contracts and so on. And I just felt that it's also a catchy name and something that I felt would be the best one to go for.
And so you set up the smart contract on the Ethereum blockchain. What was the process? How did you kind of go about thinking about, okay, which blockchain do I want to build the smart contract on? Which blockchain do I want my project to be on?
Yeah, I think at the time before we launched, so I only started working on the project about a year and a half ago. And at the time, it was mostly Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain, which were the kind of the biggest blockchains by market cap out there. And they both had smart contract functionality, and they both would fit the requirements for what we needed on the platform. So I thought initially kind of Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain, and then all the other kind of layer one blockchains started developing and improving over time. So then about a couple of months ago, we launched on Polygon Matic network, and in a month's time we're going to launch on Algorand blockchain. So I think every blockchain has its own kind of benefits, and there's people that use most of the other blockchains out there. So we didn't want to limit to one blockchain. We wanted to kind of be multi blockchain, and that's where the industry is heading towards now.
Which blockchains do you personally prefer to build on? When I talk to developers or when I talk to investors within these different projects, clearly Ethereum within, the Ethereum virtual machine is very well adopted, but people always complain, the market complains about high gas fees, high transaction fees. What are your thoughts on Ethereum versus some of the other blockchains, the Ethereum killers, as they're called sometimes?
Yeah, so I think Ethereum is definitely kind of the biggest blockchain out there. It has the most applications. It's been used extensively, and by definition, if a blockchain is being used more and has more participants and more validators and more kind of miners, then it's more secure. So I think the benefits that Ethereum brings is that if you're transacting in large amounts, or if you're holding large amounts, then it's best to have it on one of the most secure networks out there. And after Bitcoin, I think Ethereum fits that bill. But if you have a project or a product or service that you want to set up on a blockchain, if it's going to be kind of a lot of transactions which are kind of smaller in value, then it doesn't make commercial sense for you to use Ethereum as a blockchain, because the gas fees and the transactions fees won't make sense. Like, why would you transact in $50 and then have to pay something similar in gas fees? It doesn't make any sense. So it's better to, if you're going to have transactions of micro transactions, as you call it, then you would be better off using kind of one of the networks out there that are cheaper, such as Binance Smart Chain or Polygon Matic or Avalanche or Cardano or Solana. And there's many other layer one blockchains out there, and they have their own merits, but most of them have different types of applications that you can use on them, and it just depends on your requirements for your business and what makes most sense to you.
As far that's yeah, I mean, that's very interesting, because that's one of the things where if you're a new investor looking at the digital asset space and the various blockchains, you can get lost with the sheer number of choice that you have. How do you go about recommending, or I don't even know if you do recommend, how investors should invest? And again, we're not recommending any investments, but how do you think about the blockchain from a novice looking in, somebody who just wants to get their feet in the water?
Yeah, I think for most people who are new to this space, my thoughts are they should, go with kind of tried and tested and trusted platforms and blockchains and cryptocurrencies that are in the market. I think most people should start off, with a small budget and make mistakes on a smaller scale, and then once they kind of have more experience and more comfortable with it, then they can kind of start deploying more capital into the space. And as you rightly said, there's so many different projects, there's so many different blockchains out there now that it's going to take you a lot of time just to kind of get a basic understanding of what you're doing and what to invest in and what to participate in. And obviously that's took me 6 months to kind of get to grips with the market and the technology and so on. So I think if you're somebody who's new to the market, I think you should either go with an asset manager that has experience and has a track record, so that you don't have to worry about following the markets and following your investment and so on, or you can kind of participate or invest in the more recognized and higher market cap digital assets and crypto assets out there. But at the same time, if you're going to do that, then you should also kind of make sure you take the time to read and learn and experience different things in the crypto asset space, even if it's just like 1 hour a week or 1 hour a day or 1 hour a month, depending on how much bandwidth you have with your normal kind of day job and your everyday life. Then you should put some time into learning about the investments and the market that you're investing in.
Well, one of the things when I talk to other investors that are trying to dip their toe in the water is security, transparency. They're not sure of how the technology works. And then you get kind of these headline risk events. We saw just a week or so ago, that couple in New York who had hacked one of the centralized exchanges to the tune of about $4 billion of Bitcoin. First of all, have you looked at that story closely? I found it fascinating how, this couple in their 30s was able to steal $4 billion and go undetected for 5 to 6 years. How is the blockchain structured where somebody can commit this level of theft and really go undetected for years? And
so
take us inside a little bit.
So I think when they actually did that at the time, the assets weren't worth $4 billion or whatever it was. It was probably worth like, I don't know, it was 100 million or a couple of 100 millions worth at the time. But even back then, you have to remember that the actual technology and the actual infrastructure was still very young at that time. But it's actually the technology that's allowed these people to get caught and get traced, because blockchain transactions are transparent. You can see where every single transaction is going from and going to. So that's eventually how they got found out. And the exchange that was hacked, which was Bitfinex, they always kind of monitored the actual wallet that was holding the assets. And then when the assets started moving, that's when they could trace the people who were moving the assets, and that's how they the authorities were able to catch the culprits, and the technology did its job in that instance. But there's always going to be cybersecurity risks associated with digital assets in general. Even kind of large corporations kind of get their systems hacked and so on. So why wouldn't the centralized exchange or centralized entity be able to get hacked? So those are kind of, when it comes to centralized systems, there's always going to be a risk of security breaches and so on. But in terms of a blockchain network itself, because of its decentralized nature, then it's very difficult to actually, hack into the actual blockchain network itself and do something to kind of damage it or what have you. So actual blockchain technology is very secure, but centralized entities and centralized systems are prone to getting hacked. And that's what happened several years ago. And that's why the headline is there now, because the value of those assets went up hugely over time. And the transactions themselves helped in locating the actual culprits.
So technically speaking, every transaction on the blockchain is available and can be read and analyzed by the public with
Sure.
the right tools, and you just go literally online and you have these blockchain readers or screeners, and you can pretty much just go through line by line different transactions.
Sure.
And so everything can be traced.
For sure.
Everything.
There are some blockchains out there which have an anonymous element to it, such as Monero and a few other networks. But like with Bitcoin and Ethereum and the larger kind of blockchains, it's all transparent. There's a record of every single transaction, and if you have the right tools and so on, and the authorities have the tools to kind of trace IP addresses and so on, so then you can kind of locate the actual originator of these transactions and then identify them as well. But the actual blockchain transactions or hashes don't show you the identity of a person or the IP address of a person. They show you the actual data kind of that's involved in the transactions in terms of financial data.
How worried should the traditional financial services institutions, whether it's the banks, depositories, how concerned should they be about this rapid technological innovation and adoption?
I think they shouldn't be. They should be more kind of embracing the technology, because it brings a lot of benefits, especially to the financial services sector and the financial services types of activities. So I think, whether it's banks or financial institutions, they should be looking at ways they can actually use the technology to enhance their products and services and activities. And, that's an angle they should be looking at it from. First, the kind of institutions and banks and so on, they were laughing at it originally. They were dismissing it originally, but now they're kind of, they can't seem to, it's not dying, or it's not going away anytime soon. So if you can't beat it, then join it, right? So most of them, I think, will be kind of putting in resources to deploy the technology into their systems, or they're kind of investing in the asset class as well. And I think with Bitcoin, some of the kind of larger institutions are actually deploying capital into investing in Bitcoin for the long term as a kind of asset on their balance sheets and on their treasuries. And I think that trend will continue. And I think, over the next 5 to 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if most of the major banks out there are actually using blockchain technology extensively, maybe issuing their own kind of crypto asset or their own kind of products and services that are utilizing blockchain technology.
When you look at one of the arguments that I hear from the industry is how people should think about the blockchain industry and digital assets really is shifting from Web 2 over to Web 3. And so this is similar to, the 90s with, the dial-up modem, and you have to wait, and you have to wait. And then all of a sudden, we're going from, a few kilobytes per second to gigabytes per second. I even saw a meme that said, Web3 is basically the revenge against Web2 centralization, where you have essentially, the web, the internet is really controlled by a small handful of companies, mainly in, western coast of the United States, between Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Google, control a tremendous amount of internet traffic, and that really the answer to this kind of hegemony, this kind of monopoly is Web3, is DeFi, is digital assets, blockchain. What do you think of that argument? And could you say that just like any other market, you're going to have a handful of entities, in this case, whether it's blockchain, Bitcoin, or Ethereum, that are going to reign supreme? How do you tackle this viewpoint?
Yeah, I see why people say that Web 3.0 is kind of disrupting Web 2.0 and bringing about more decentralization and taking the powers out of a few handful entities and so on. Those kind of arguments have merits to it. But I think, the technology is still evolving, it's still developing. There's still a lot of innovation that's yet to happen for blockchain technology, and Web 3.0 is, I think, it's kind of a term that's referred to where blockchain technology can lead to. I don't think that the technology has actually reached its potential yet. I think there's still a hell of a lot of innovation that needs to happen before it can be considered a mature, stable technology. I think we're probably now still in that dial-up modem phase that you're talking about, and we're just starting to kind of expand the technology to have the broadband or fiber optics kind of cable kind of capabilities. So I think it's still a long way away from getting to fully be on terms of that Web 3.0 that you're talking about. But yeah, there's a lot of, innovations that are happening. There's a lot of good things that are happening, and I think it's only gonna accelerate over time.
To take that one step further, how important is 5G? And we're starting seeing 5G being rolled out in the US, Asia, the Middle East. How important is 5G going to be in crypto adoption, blockchain adoption?
I think 5G as a technology, it's enabling a faster kind of connectivity, faster kind of internet speeds on, devices and applications and so on. I mean, I think it would be useful more so when it comes to more complex kind of applications that are running on top of blockchain systems. If you think about, for example, the metaverse, I think, that's a very complex kind of tech stack on top of blockchain, or application on top of blockchain, that I think the faster the speed of the connection you have, the kind of better your experience is in a virtual world or in a metaverse. So I think that will definitely help on that side. But the adoption is going to come from the actual solutions and applications that are on blockchain technology being superior to the existing legacy systems and legacy applications that you refer to with Web 2.0. So I think once there's a clear kind of benefit and the rewards outweigh the risks of using a specific technology, that's when you're going to see a mass adoption. And at the moment, the crypto asset market is extremely speculative. extremely high risk. There's no denying that. If somebody tells you that it's a sure bet or it's easy money and so on, then they obviously don't know what they're talking about, because
Run
they're
away.
obviously ignoring all the risks that are associated with the crypto asset space, and cybersecurity and security being one of the most important risks out there. And there's a bunch of other risks as well. Market risk is evident there because of the volatility in the market. You can be up 100% one day, and then a couple of months later you can be down 90% and so on. So there's a lot of things that you need to be aware of before you kind of jump into the space. And you need to kind of get the opinions and views of people who have been experienced in the market and can give you their kind of honest opinion and share their experience with you before you make your own decision. So you don't just listen to one person or one entity. You should definitely ask even the contrarians and the people who are negative about the technology and get their views. But then if you do so, you should also go on the flip side and listen to the opinions and views of the people who are pro crypto asset and who actually have embraced the technologies and have been investing in the crypto asset space and have an interest in it. So I think having a all-round view before deploying capital is very useful.
Where are you spending most of your time in the industry?
I think most of my time at the moment is tied up with Shisha Finance and expanding the portfolio and expanding the team and expanding onto all the different blockchains out there. That's been keeping me the busiest. And I think all the use cases of blockchain that are relevant to the investment space, whether it's gaming or whether it's NFTs or metaverse or DeFi and all the other use cases that are kind of becoming more popular, that's where I'm kind of focusing my attention to and learning a lot from and deploying capital into. So I think most of my time is on finding projects to invest in, talking to projects, talking to partners and getting more strategic partners on board and sharing deal flow with these partners, or getting in touch with service providers who can help our portfolio projects. And I do a lot of speaking in conferences locally here just to try and get the local Emirati youth to kind of get some motivation and encouragement if they want to actually venture into the space. They can see somebody who's from the UAE or from the region who's actually active in the space and successful, and they can be kind of motivated and encouraged to do the same and not have the fear that one might have if there wasn't anybody who's already gone through the process of adopting a technology. So I like to kind of talk to people and educate people and do some speaking here and there. And but most of my activity and most of my time is spent on value add stuff related to Shisha Finance and expanding it and getting it to the next level.
So let's dive in there a little bit more. I'm sure I'm really interested in understanding a little bit more the value proposition, and I'm sure our viewers are too, of Shisha Finance. Some of the folks that we know are involved in DeFi. We spoke, we talk about that from time to time. You ended up going to DeFi. First of all, can you provide us an overview of DeFi?
Sure.
What makes it different than centralized?
Sure. So DeFi is decentralized finance, is pretty much anything or any kind of system or application that disrupts the traditional and centralized kind of products and services out there, whether it's banks or exchanges or all of these different financial products and services that previously have been centralized. But now with decentralized finance, with DeFi, it's actually applications and protocols and platforms which are disrupting those existing kind of traditional and centralized financial systems, because they kind of give power back to the users, or it gives more fair kind of valuation, fair costings, removes the middleman or the middlemen from the processes of existing financial products and services. So in terms of what I did with Shisha Finance, I was very much active in participating in DeFi protocols, and I could see the benefits of them. But essentially what I wanted to do was create a protocol or a platform which was disrupting an existing kind of traditional finance product or service. And the one that I had the most experience in is a VC fund, or traditional VC, or asset management. And kind of because I had that experience of traditional asset management, and then because of my experience with actually angel investing in a lot of different crypto and blockchain startups over the years, I felt that, Shisha Finance as a decentralized VC disruptor kind of DeFi platform was something that was much needed in the overall market. And I think, it's something that's unique. And, the way we're disrupting the traditional VC model is we're kind of offering access to a diversified crypto portfolio to people. They don't have to have a huge amount of money. There's no minimum amount to invest. There's no performance fees. There's no management fees. Everything is transparent about the portfolio. Your position in the fund or your LP position is kind of live and tradable, and you can get in and out whenever you want. And the returns of the portfolio are transparent as well. The projects and the portfolio are well documented, and we show the details of why we invested in those projects. So essentially, the kind of benefits somebody would have in getting into Shisha Finance would be, like you asked, what is a novice? How is a novice going to be able to read all the information about all the different blockchains and all the different crypto assets out there and make a decision? But with Shisha Finance, we just kind of do all the research, analysis, due diligence, look at all the different blockchains, look at all the different projects, and make an educated kind of decision and kind of calculate the risks associated with investing early stage. And then, somebody who participates on Shisha Finance doesn't need to really understand blockchain technology or kind of understand the market. They just, simply kind of purchase the tokens, stake the tokens on our platform, and then they automatically get distributed to their wallets, the tokens of all these projects that we invest in, and they automatically get a diversified exposure and a diversified portfolio without having to go through all the effort and time that's needed. And then whilst they're invested, they can also kind of read up on all the different projects we're investing in, and read up on blockchain, and read up on all the different things that they need to know about the market over time. And they don't need to worry about kind of which investments to make, how much to invest, and so on.
So you're doing all the back end, you're doing the due diligence, you're analyzing which projects you're going to be investing in, and then essentially somebody who wants exposure to that will purchase your token and stake it on your platform. Is that
Yes.
Yeah.
Good summary there.
Yeah, we should put it on your website.
That's it. I think most people find it difficult to understand, but yeah, hopefully we have a lot of content on education as well, so that people can kind of get to grips with what we're doing and the mechanics of how to stake and the mechanics of actually how to get crypto in the first place before they can actually get into Shisha Finance. So there's still a lot of work that's being done on the marketing side and on the education side for people that are participating in our community.
That's a great point, actually. On the marketing side and education side, one of the things, as I kind of got exposed to the industry, is seeing the new ways that people are really communicating, whether it's through Telegram or Twitter or Discord. There's a real community engagement with using some of these tools. Which tools are you most active with, and which ones do you prefer? How do you engage your community? How do you build the community? Take us a little bit behind the scenes.
Yeah, so we effectively use all the kind of social media channels that are popular out there, whether it's Telegram, whether it's Discord, whether it's Medium, YouTube, Instagram. We're looking into TikTok as well. I think all the younger generation are kind of heavily using TikTok, but I think Twitter and Telegram are the most kind of used communication and social media channels and crypto in general. And most of the community uses that. I think for the NFT use case and blockchain, most people are using Discord, and most of the developer communities are using Discord as a communication channel as well. But there's so many different social media channels to kind of communicate on and to advertise on and to update communities on.
How important are the developers in your world?
I think if you're a startup in the crypto space, or you're an entrepreneur in the crypto space, or you're operating a business in the crypto space, I think there's two essential elements there. One of them is tech, and the other one is marketing. I think what we saw with, for example, a cryptocurrency which is called Doge, is that the reason why it kind of made crazy returns and huge returns over the last year or so is because of the community that it had. Even though the tech wasn't quite, innovative or kind of had a clear use case for the technology, it's the community behind it that kind of drove the growth of the cryptocurrency itself. So I think there's definitely huge importance in terms of the community side, but there's also a huge importance on the tech side as well, especially if you're kind of offering a financial product or service. Then you have to make sure the tech is good enough, as well as building and growing your community to kind of get some traction to it.
Yeah, Doge is fascinating. So is Shiba Inu and some of these other, many Elon coins, and they're fascinating because they're intrinsically, there is no value there, but they're really social media tokens. They're really, hence the word meme stocks or meme coins. And you have one tweet that can literally move the market, which is something that we haven't really seen. We don't see in traditional equity markets, where you have maybe a tweet from a Mark Cuban or somebody else that might move a stock half a percentage points, 1%, but you move into kind of the meme stock world, and one tweet from Elon can send a coin 3x, 4x in literally a day.
Sure. Yeah, that's effectively what all these meme coins have leveraged on marketing and community growth, and that's what's kind of got them the price momentum. And don't forget, the smaller kind of cryptocurrencies and crypto assets are still very much very, very tiny compared to the market caps and the markets of traditional assets. So I think it's easier to move the price of an asset when there's lower liquidity and a lower market cap compared to the stock market, where it's much, much bigger in market cap, and you need a hell of a lot of kind of volume to move the price considerably.
When you look at where we are right now in the industry, some say that regulation is, regulators really have not gotten their hands around the industry. How do you view regulation, both from a global perspective as well as regional and UAE? Specifically, I read recently that UAE is now actually issuing a federal license for centralized exchanges to come and operate with clear rules, clear guidelines in UAE. You look at other countries, whether it's Europe or the United States, they're still trying to figure out, okay, which agency is actually going to take the lead? Is it the SEC, CFTC, FINRA. How do you, as an active participant, navigate the regulatory wave?
Yeah, I think look, for institutional adoption of digital assets and crypto assets, I think regulation is extremely important. Regulatory risk is something that most institutions would rather avoid. You don't want to deploy large amounts of capital in an asset class which is not properly regulated and still immature and so on, and has a lowish kind of market cap considering everything. So I think regulation is very important for institutions to come into the market. Most retail people would not really care too much about regulation, but I think regulation is there to essentially protect consumers and the everyday users in a market. So I think it's also something that would be useful to retail. Most of the people who are anti kind of democracy and don't like kind of centralized institutions and so on would probably be cringing right now. But I think the regulation is very important. I know what the institutions think about before they go into an asset class, and I can tell you that it's extremely important to them. And I think those people who say, "Oh, we don't need institutions, we don't need regulation," I think they're kind of misguided in their thoughts. And if they really looked at the bigger picture and mass adoption of the crypto assets and digital assets, then everything related to regulation and all the risks associated with a new asset class need to be kind of lowered before you see mass adoption of investments and mass investments coming in from institutions.
One of the areas that I've been looking at are the centralized exchanges, virtual currency exchanges, whether it's some of the big ones, and just fascinated by that business model where there's been such a widespread adoption, and they themselves have kind of become the gatekeepers to a certain extent to people that want to come in to Web3 and digital assets. You look at FTX that went from a startup mode 2 years ago to $30 billion valuation. Binance, obviously, the 800-pound gorilla. How do you view these centralized exchanges as being gatekeepers, and especially when you look at what happened in Canada just a few days ago, where the government came down with a ban for certain cryptocurrency assets at some of these exchanges? Doesn't that really go against the whole prospect and philosophy of decentralized finance and blockchain technology? And I know that you're in DeFi, but you also are involved in a lot of other different projects as an investor and advisor. So I'd be fascinated to hear your point of view on this.
I don't think there's going to be a world where every single thing is fully decentralized. I think there's always going to be a need for centralized products and services or centralized entities to be kind of gatekeepers. And especially like when you think about regulation, what is regulation? Regulation is something that clear policies and guidelines from a centralized entity about how people participate in a market and how people are protected in a market. So I think there has to be an element of centralization, even though on the exchange side that you mentioned, there are huge centralized exchanges in the crypto asset space, but also there are a lot of decentralized exchanges that are operating on blockchain that actually do have a huge kind of value lock asset base there, and they're still increasing in popularity. So I think centralized exchanges play their part because they all have their own communities where adoption of new crypto assets can happen rapidly. So if you want to list, excuse me, if you know, like, for example, Binance, if you have an existing crypto asset and it lists on Binance, then automatically overnight you kind of tap into a community of millions and millions of users, and that's kind of another growth for your community. So I think the centralized exchanges will always have a part to play. Eventually, once decentralized exchanges can actually do what centralized exchanges can do in an efficient manner and in a way where there's an order book, there's all of the things, benefits that you get from a centralized exchange that are applicable on a decentralized exchange, then that's when you're going to start seeing a shift from users going into decentralized exchanges. But I don't think these decentralized exchanges have reached the maturity or the tech is there yet for decentralized exchanges to kind of take market share away from centralized exchanges.
Interesting. And how does Shisha Finance position itself within these centralized exchanges? Do you view them as competitors to your overall business models, or would you, list your coins on the exchanges? Kind of what's your view there?
Yeah, no, they're not competitors at all. They have a different business model, and what we're doing is completely different to centralized exchanges. We have our tokens listed on a couple of centralized exchanges already, and we're looking at getting our tokens listed onto the bigger kind of tier one centralized exchanges. Our tokens are already trading on decentralized exchanges as well with a good level of liquidity. So they kind of are beneficial to projects for them to get onto centralized exchanges. So I think it's an enabler and a kind of a way to grow awareness and grow your community through.
Excellent. So we'll end it on what are you most excited about for 2022 and the next coming years, both Shisha Finance as well as blockchain writ large?
Yeah, I think I'm most excited about all the new cases that are actually becoming very popular, whether they're NFTs or metaverse or play to earn or gamify. Those kind of use cases have really, grown hugely in popularity, and even like celebrities and social media and media publications are talking about it and publishing articles about these things. So I think that's really good to see. But I would say that I think for Shisha Finance is for us to kind of get to that next level where we see the rapid growth in community and user base, and actually make it easier for people to go from the traditional world into a decentralized VC world, and going from fiat to crypto and crypto to fiat is something that we need to kind of establish as well. But I think, just seeing the level of kind of innovation is really, really exciting. And to see these use cases kind of take off is very exciting. But I think also seeing more institutions coming into the market is something that I'm eager for. And I think that's going to happen with time. But I think also 2022, we'll probably see kind of the start of a bear market, maybe towards the middle or end of this year. We might see that, or maybe we are already there. I don't know, but I think that's something that somebody needs to be mindful of. But I think with bear markets, that's when people start building, and you really see important innovation happening. Bull markets are usually overhyped, and there's too much speculation happening. But for me, it's whether it's a bear market or a bull market, I'm kind of building and investing for the long term. So there's always going to be opportunities, whatever the market is doing.
Sure. Actually, another point we didn't talk about, and I'd love to get your point on, are the DAOs. Have you looked at DAOs? Are you incorporating DAOs within your projects. What are your thoughts on that? And is that something that's really going to hold a lot of promise in the coming years?
I think most of the bigger kind of DeFi protocols are using a DAO mechanism for governance of their platforms and governance of their protocols. At Shisha Finance, we are implementing a DAO mechanism in the next month or so. And I think it's more kind of popular with protocols that are decentralized in nature, and where, the founders of those protocols or the team behind it want to give control of the protocol or decision-making capabilities of the protocol to the community and the users of the actual protocol. So I think, a DAO is something that's a phenomena that's becoming more and more popular, especially with decentralized finance applications and protocols. And I think when it comes to kind of governing a protocol or governing a platform, I think DAOs have their benefits. And I think if you have a DAO that's governing a protocol or a platform, then that's kind of like a self-governing mechanism or a self-regulating mechanism, whereby the actual users of a product and service can actually decide on how things should work on that platform, and the policies and procedures of that platform and the operations of that platform, because it's in their interest for it to run in the best way possible for them. So I think, having a DAO mechanism is something that's extremely beneficial, especially on the decentralized finance side. And I think it's also kind of the argument against regulation is, yes, with, these DeFi protocols or decentralized protocols, a DAO can actually take on the role of the regulator and be a decentralized regulator rather than a centralized regulator.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating. There's so much excitement and enthusiasm and really technological innovation. I completely see why you're in this industry and in the mix, and I think it's going to be very exciting, and I look forward to seeing everything that you're going to be building in the next few years. And thank you for joining me today to share a little bit about your journey.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me, and hopefully we can do another one of these in another few years and look back to it and kind of compare the market to where it was 3 years ago in the future, and then laugh about it and talk about maybe some other new kind of use cases that nobody has even thought about.
Yeah, exactly, like Neuralink, chip and
fast forward. I'd love to.
Maybe we'll be able
to fast forward.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be able to send blockchain telepathically. Saeed,
thank you so much.
And look forward to seeing you soon.
My pleasure. Have a wonderful day.